What's poppin', everyone? It's VenomousStare, back with some StarCraft 2 videos. That's what you love me for, that's what you know me for, and that's what you leave that like rating for, right guys? Make sure you leave that like rating. Anyway, we're going to be talking about a Zerg versus Protoss style today, focusing on the Zerg player, me, and I have two replays to show to demonstrate my points. They are both against the same opponent, a guy named Demon. And I'm intentionally going to be talking about how to play against the same opponent multiple times. Now, in the video, this information is kind of targeted towards, in a ladder game. In other words, if you're playing ladder and hit a Protoss player named Demon, and then the next game, you queue up again and hit him again, how should that affect your play? Whether it's Protoss players named Demon, or Terran players named Angel, or Zerg players named Macro King. You just really have to know how to play against the same guy twice, especially if you go for a unique build, a cheese, or a weird style. If you're playing like Idra and just doing super cookie cutter solid macro stuff, it's not really as important. But we're also going to be talking about mass Ling styles, so that's kind of the two focuses of this video today is mass Ling styles and how to play against the same person twice in a row. And it's not just twice in a row, I guess this information would also be applicable to best of series, so if you were to play like best of 3s or best of 5s against someone. So let's just talk about the basic build order of mass Ling, because mass Ling is kind of like an early mid-game strategy that transitions well into a ton of different things, whether it be Muta or Infestor or Quick Ultra, so you can't really say mass Ling and then tie it into something else that's more of a mid and late game thing. So that's why I just like to say the phrase mass Ling as opposed to something like, Muta or dropped or something that occurs in the mid to late game or mid game. So Demon is doing something common, which is a probe scout, and then what he's doing, you see all those commands, essentially he's held shift and just waypointed up move commands around my base. Now this is pretty common if you think your opponent's going to choose you or you want to keep an eye on them, because a lot of times if you just have a probe that's scouting, it's going to get there right around the time when the Zerg natural just gets put down. By the way, in this game, it's not really like a cast, as we see me clear out the probe there, like a pro game would be that I would cast. This is more of a tutorial, so I will be slowing down and explaining things in detail sometimes if necessary. I'm also going to be pointing out a plethora of newbie tips, because I know a lot of newer players play this game, and I know that a lot of players really have to subscribe to my channel and watch my content to try to learn and try to get better at the game. And I like to help people get better at the game because I think StarCraft 2 is really fun, but if you don't have someone to help you get better at it, you can kind of get bottlenecked because of certain macro mechanics that really you wouldn't be able to figure out organically. You would have to either play thousands of games to figure them out, or watch streams, kind of deduce them there, or watch videos and figure them out that way. So we can see that I went hatchery on 17 at about 53 seconds in the game. After that I made 2 drones, took a gas, made a couple more drones, and then made a pool. That's extraordinarily standard. That means that right when your pool finishes, you're going to be able to pick up Ling speed and then obviously double queen. So that's very basic. After that I made an evolution chamber. Now if you're one of these people who likes to copy build orders like at the exact moment and are very precise, you can always pause and go back and watch at which supply I'm making these structures. But in general, I like to follow build orders just in a kind of rough order as to how you do things. So let me pause and talk about this in detail, because this is really, really important and something a lot of new players really don't know about. So this is something I actually learned from Day9, a very popular StarCraft 2 content producer who has since kind of left the scene. He's brothers with Nick Tasteless Plot, the GSL caster, Artosis' cohort, and basically what Day9 said was that whenever you learn build orders and memorize build orders, you shouldn't learn them in this rigid number-based style of, okay, make an Overlord make an OV at 14, make a hatch at 70, you know, all the way down to 50, you know, Hydrogen at 56. Because when I first started playing the game, this is how I would try to figure out build orders. Is I would like go to Team Liquid and see these build orders and just try to copy them. Sorry about the coughing, my throat's a little rasp. But these Team Liquid build orders would have the builds all the way out to like 80 supply. And it's not that there's something wrong with following build orders, or there's something wrong with having an order in which you do things. In fact, that's kind of the point of what I'm getting at, is you do want to have an order in which you do things as opposed to a rigid structure. And why is that? It's because StarCraft 2 is a game that varies a lot. And your opponent can do wonky things, things that he makes up, you know, random bullshit ladder builds. He can do crazy cheeses or proxies. So if you follow these dogmatic builds very rigidly, or excuse me, if you follow these hard build orders very dogmatically and rigidly, then it means that if your opponent does something in the early game that throws you off, you're not going to be able to cope because you're going to be so used to following this hard structured build order. And if you ever take a lot of eco damage early, that throws you off too. So the point is that whenever you learn build orders, you need to learn them based on when you do things in succession, as opposed to like numbers or certain times. In other words, Nexus, and then after you build your Nexus and build a few probes, you build Gate, and then Gas. And then as soon as your Gate finishes, build Cyber Core, and as soon as Cyber Core finishes, build Twilight. So that's the way that you should look to learn builds. So that's the way that I'm going to try to explain my play. So you can see another thing that I did very early on was I got Overlord speed. Now, in Zerg play, and I guess in StarCraft 2 in general, I'm going to have to pause again because this is extraordinarily important. How you spend your initial increments of gases, and when I say increments, it's usually increments of 100, is very important. What do I mean by that? I mean that you're Zerg, right? You're only going to take one geyser. You want to be mining as many minerals as possible, as frequently as possible, because you want to have the most mineral income to be able to pump drones and queens and get expansions. That's the entire point of Zerg, really, is spiraling out of control with your economy, taking a lot of the map and overwhelming your opponent. So that means that we only want to take the one gas geyser. Some people like Snoot elect to even pull the guys off of gas, and you can see perhaps I should have done this as I'm up to 200, but I'll explain why I don't in a second. So the gas is mining, but it's very valuable, so as soon as it rolls in, you should be spending it. And this at 440, it's less important, but very early on in the game, like right when the pool finishes, this is what I'm talking about as far as how important it is. That's when you really need to spend it quickly. So the first 100 goes to Ling speed, and then the next 100 goes to Overlord speed, and then the next 100 goes to the melee upgrades. Now, with the rest of our gas, we're going to want to get some Dropper Lords, and we're going to want to get Lair, but that's more of in the future. So why do I get Overlord speed early? Dark, the Korean Zerg, who Artosis said plays most like the classic Zerg hero Nest-T, likes to get it. And that kind of really got me thinking that, okay, if Artosis is saying that he's like Nest-T, of course Artosis is famous for loving Nest-T and holding him in a high regard, then it means something, and I should take heed of his advice. And I kind of realized that if you get early Overlord speed against Protoss, they can never catch you off guard. And my opponent, Demon here, has gone for Stargate and Twilight, a very tech-heavy build. It's very good to go I don't know what I just said. I meant to say Twilight and Stargate. And the Twilight Council is good because they just made charge 100-100, adepts are strong, and of course Resonating Glaives is cheap, Blink has been good since 2010. And the Stargate is the quintessential ZvP structure, kind of because you can do this. Get Phoenix, which are extraordinarily good at hunting down Overlords, getting map control. Once you get 4, they're great at harass because you can go pick up drones. And to be honest, I think Protoss players should aim to go Phoenix almost every game. And look at this. I did a Queen Taxi. So I'm going to have to pause again. Remember earlier whenever I said that perhaps I should be mining gas, or not mining gas like Snoop, but I'll explain why I do with this style in a second? This is why. Now, even it's actually a lot more valuable than you would think to have those meager 2 workers mining more minerals instead of gas. And if I wanted to just pump pure lings and queens like many players do, I would have done that. But I've gotten a baneling nest here, and I can start another upgrade, yet another reason to continue mining gas. I know a lot of people really favor not mining this gas, that's why I'm harping on it. But really the crux of the issue is that I wanted to do a big drop in the mid-game. So you can see I had to make overlords and bring them here, but after I saw that he went Stargate, remember I got overlord speed, so I'm going to scout pretty much everything. I pulled my overlords back. Remember a few minutes ago when they were scoured all across the map for map control? That was very good, but after I scouted the Stargate, I knew that he was going to go hunting with Phoenix. With that Shift A move command, any player worth their salt will do that. So I pulled them all back. That's another advantage of spending your second 100 gas on that overlord speed, is if your opponent goes Phoenix, you can have your overlords aggressively spread all over the map in the early game and not have to worry about taking a bunch of damage. Because if you have your overlords like I had them, and you scout the Phoenix, you're not going to be able to pull them back to your base if you don't have overlord speed. And obviously, I'm just going to call these the queen taxis whenever there's queens full of, or whenever there's a dropper lord full of queens. Essentially what a queen taxi is a dropper lord full of 4 queens. And between mining the gas, making all these drop overlords, and then putting 4 queens in is really the unique part of this build that makes it interesting. So normally you would think, oh, a Protoss player who goes Stargate is going to be able to scout and defend drops. Well, I've kind of countered that by bringing queens. And it's very bizarre because back in the day, back in Wings of Liberty and Heart of the Swarm, Overlord drop used to be 200 and required lair. So people would never really get it and do stuff like this. Damaga would really be the only person who got close. Sometimes he would do mid-game Ling Bane aggression with Bane Rain, but that's not really what this is. This is more of a harassment thing because I plan on flying right into his main. And the reason that it's relevant that one of these is full of queens is because even though Phoenix are really good at harassing bases that have 1 queen at them, they're not actually good at taking on 4 queens at once. And that's not something that's been tested a whole lot because, like I said, in Wings of Liberty and HOTS, not a thing. People couldn't do these builds. Now that you can get Dropper Lord simply at the Evolution Chamber, it's different. So I drop the queens out and pick off the Phoenix. Let's just look at his map vision. Notice that I'm counterattacking over here while I'm doing this. I'm going to pause very briefly, guys, because I'm here to briefly explain that whenever you play Mass Ling styles, the big advantage of playing Mass Ling styles versus Protoss is it's very, very easy to fuck up and lose everything as Protoss, especially at your wall in here. Protoss is not Terran. They don't hard wall in. They don't have a structure that can raise up and down. So what they have to do, and I'm sure almost everyone knows this, but a lot of people don't really consider it as much as they should. Protoss players are forced to leave a little hole at their front door and then leave a unit here to wall in. This means that if at any point they hit the control army hotkey and like, oh shit, I'm being mass dropped, control army, panic and move it over, the front door's open. Now the lower leagues you get, the more people use this button. And you really shouldn't use this button. I'm really guilty of doing it, to be honest, sometimes. Not really when I play Zerg, but at other times. But it's really bad, because if you have units on the towers or units checking bases, they're going to come back. That's why you should always get in the habit of just making control groups and setting them to 1, 2, and 3. Anyway, when you play Mass Ling styles, it's very important to try to do counterattacks and run-bys. Because even if you have a ton of Lings, running them up in one location isn't really going to be that difficult for Protoss to deal with if they have force fields and as they tech up and get more units. So really the key to this unit composition is attacking in multiple locations. Also notice that I've gotten +1. Many Protoss players delay their forges. Notice he's double upgrading, which is slightly abnormal, but he's getting his 2 forges like after his 3rd's completed. So that means that Protoss players don't really get that fast +1 anymore. That's kind of been replaced by this resonating glaives. and that's also due to the fact people open Gateway as opposed to Forge. I know I said this would be a short pause, I kind of feel silly now, but this is all very important info. So, as I said, always be counterattacking whenever you're pressuring with drops. So this first game is, yes, the Massling style, but I do a lot of Dropper Lord play. And we can see here, I ran at the army and then got a few Lings in his mineral line, made him pull. But lots of Lings are being dropped in his main, and I really mess up my micro here and leave 2 Dropper Lords in the middle of the map. Really, really awful, to be honest. See, if I had had the Queen Taxi, I could have slaughtered these 2 Phoenix. But because I have +1 melee upgrades, these Zerglings just rip through structures. And the Protoss player just blew a bunch of energy and Photon Overcharge in the main. And that allowed me to say, well, okay, I knew that your army was over at your 3rd, and I sniped your valuable sentries, and it was just the depths. So I'm going to run over and snipe that base, because +1 does a ton of damage. And he really wanted to take care of those queens, but because this 3rd base is over here without any real SimCity, I can ravage it. And what do I mean by SimCity? In Heart of the Swarm, Protoss players would put 1 pylon here, 1 pylon here, a cannon, and a gateway. This meant that not only was the structure protected surface area-wise from a Ling counter, but there was also a cannon that couldn't be targeted by Lings. Now that Photon Overcharge can be put onto pylons, remember in Heart of the Swarm it was a spell that was bound to the Nexus, Protoss players are a little more higgledy-piggledy. That is to say, they are more haphazard when it comes to defending their 3rd. Look at this, just 3 pylons, guys. And his Forge just finished. Another reason that as the style is powerful, Forges are being delayed, that means less cannons. But remember, when I ran up here, I saw this light defense. Really, only a Mothership Core can defend this. And since his entire army got pulled over here, I know that this is not defended. You want to know how to guarantee a Protoss is not going to defend their 3rd? A bunch of Dropper Lords, and then if you start focus firing a base, it'll scare the crap out of a Protoss player if they see that, oh wow, my natural's going to go down. They're almost certain to move absolutely everything that they have to try to hold this natural. Especially in a situation where it was very clear that I was focus firing. It's also worth noting that the faster units attack, the more important upgrades are. So since Zerglings and Marines attack extraordinarily quickly, they're very, very good with upgrades. And I got a very quick +1. Remember, I just got 1 Evo. I didn't upgrade with just the 1 gas. I couldn't afford double ups with all these Dropper Lords. And this is another issue. Because I lost my queens out of the Queen Taxi, he really can do me in with Phoenix. Now this is only 3 Phoenix. If I had 4 queens here, that would be game changing. I would have to micro a lot and do constant pickups to ward off these Phoenix, but does a lot of damage there, and I preemptively made a bunch of OBs, so I'm fine. So I've successfully sniped the 2nd and the 3rd, and it wasn't just a matter of, oh, my opponent was shit and let me snipe 2 of his bases. No, there were a lot of things that I did in this game that led up to those bases being vulnerable. Anytime you do a mass drop into someone's main, it puts so much pressure on them, an almost unfathomable amount of pressure. And another great thing about forcing someone's entire army is you really scout their composition. I'm going to pause. So when I attacked this guy's natural, what happened? I saw that he was going for Phoenix Adept mostly. Now, Adepts are very good against Lings, even Lings that are well upgraded, especially when Resonating Glaives are involved. So what did that mean? It meant that Banelings were extraordinarily important. Now my lair was a bit late here, and that's sloppy Joe. So that means my Bane speed is delayed. But against a ton of Adepts, if you have a lot of Lings, it can be okay. But if you have Ling Baneling, Ling with +1 attack, it shits on Adepts. Scarlet showed this in her GSL matches. I think it was versus Patience. And she showed it on games on my channel against that cheesy Chinese player Jim, where +1 melee upgraded Ling Bane just decimates these Adept pushes, And the fact that I focus fired the sentry at his third base is actually a pretty big deal, because sentries really screw up mass Ling attacks, and Dropper Lords can prevent that. But see, just 2 force fields. You know, if he had had 3 sentries with more energy, it would have been different. As it stands, super easy for me to clean up. Now, whenever you have a crushing army advantage like that, it's really simple. Just get us around. The last thing that you want to do is run and then A-move too quickly when only half of your Lings are around, or when only half of his army is surrounded. So the fact that I'm going for a mass Ling style and have delayed gas, notice I'm just mining off of 1 geyser, allowed me to get this insane amount of Lings. And I don't have very many workers at all, so I've cut really hard to get this much army, and I knew that this guy was going to counterattack, because when you kill someone's natural and their third, they're going to panic and counterattack you, because they think they're too far behind. And look at this! I had such a huge army, he was backpedaling, and goodbye army. And this is what I meant, one little screw up at his front door, at his wall, and he's doomed. And to be honest, I had so many Lings with +1 ups, I could have just blown down the door. And he says, laughing my fucking ass off, and leaves. So I know I paused a lot, and I got into a lot of detail there, but in all of the other casts I do, I pretty much don't pause ever. So I wanted to get into a lot of detail on this one. A few things to wrap up here. The fact that I killed this base and this base put him in a really uncomfortable position, and meant that I knew for certain that he was going to have to push and attack. Now the crux of the issue was I could pump mass Ling, and then I knew for certain that with my Dropper Lords and with some Banes, I could have used that to either re-crack the third base right when it finished, or do what I did before and kind of drop the natural and make him choose which one of his children are going to live. And even though he went for Phoenix, it was slightly countered by my Queen Taxi, and if I had better micro and had saved the Queens, I might have won earlier. So that was the first game, and of course I was spreading creep throughout that game and had taken a 4th. So here comes the second game, and this one's not going to be nearly as long, because I've kind of explained a lot of the core concepts. And I'm going to speed it up actually. So Demon is going to do a similar thing to last game, piling at the bottom of the ramp. And remember, he typed out laughing last game and responded to my good luck with a laugh. So I'm kind of puzzled at this point because he opened Phoenix and he died to a mass Overlord drop. And I kind of typed something out and then ironically respond with the same thing he kept typing at me. So this is where the playing against the same opponent kind of comes into play. So last game, Demon probe scouted, and he probe scouted too late. There's a mosquito. I don't think I got it. Damn. He scouted too late to stop the natural and delay it with the pylon, and then he ran around in the main forever and let me kind of catch his probe. So noticed he made the adjustment there and got it the hell out of dodge, but he did scout at the same time. And he's going for this double gateway opener. And I'm going for standard stuff, hatch first into Ling speed. Now it is important to note that I'm not doing what's called metagaming, which metagaming in the context of a StarCraft 2 best of or consecutive ladder games, which you can look at 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 ladder games played in a row as a best of 3 or a best of 5 or whatever, because essentially that's what it is. Notice that he has, oh no, I think, is that his patrol command? Yeah, so he has his probe patrolling on the towers here to look for cheese and look for obies, which is smart. So I am not doing what's called metagaming, which is essentially just assuming what the person you're playing is going to do the same thing that he did the last game. A more severe version of this would be like if you played a Villo on ladder and you were like, okay, he's going mech 100%, and you didn't even scout all game and you just did some ridiculous blind counter to mech. Like you went straight up to 65 drones and did like 10 dropper lords of roach drops and dropped all over his tanks and like hadn't even scouted his main or natural all game. That would be metagaming. So metagaming in this context would be assuming he's going to go for Stargate and he's going to go for Twilight again. So here's the brilliant thing about the Dark build, because that's what I'm calling it. I certainly didn't pioneer getting this fast Overlord speed. Dark did. And I am just copying it, implementing it, and speaking in English and telling you how it is effective. So let's check out my vision here. I've scouted a double gateway opener. 95% of the time this is 2 adepts and then probably 4 adepts. A smart player will make a stalker. If they're, well, this guy's going Phoenix, so he doesn't really need to make a stalker. But I have Overlord speed, so once again I'm not going to be caught off guard, and I'm making 10 Lings, and +1 is on the way. Notice I'm doing the same build as last time. The Baneling Nest is a bit earlier this game. And I'm going to pause very briefly. Why is the Baneling Nest earlier? I've scouted double gateway opener. This is indicative of the depths. Now, this isn't a constant or something that you should follow as a rule, but last game, this player went for a Twilight opener with a Resonating Glaives opener and an Adept play. Adepts are countered by, what did we say last game? +1 Banes. Notice my adjustment this game has been to get an earlier Baneling Nest and to crank out that +1 melee upgrade just like last time. So 16 Lings on the way for me with the +1 upgrade. And I'm massing up here. Notice that I already have 16 workers beautifully pumping away. That's the ideal saturation. And Demon runs in right as I move out, which is foolhardy. And he was scared. I think that he figured I had units out on the map already, so he preemptively threw his shades out in the middle while he ran in. And what did he get? Just 2 meager kills. And then because half of my army was out on the map, because I saw he was taking a third with my Overlord. So that's what happened. Demon had his Adepts over here, waited several seconds, and then after he had this third over halfway completed, I'm not sure if he had vision with this and saw it that way, but he definitely knew that I was going to move out and try to cancel this. So that's when he moved out with the Adepts. He was going to peek in and then try to retreat to his third. But I have a ton of army. So this is a really big advantage of going for this style, this Massling style, is these third bases are not going to live, especially once +1 is completed. So at this point I'm just basically testing his wall in. If this unit right here isn't on hold position, he loses the game. And considering he began the game by typing LOL and refusing to good luck, that means that losing in that fashion would probably send him in some sort of spiral down into mental oblivion. Notice that he's gone for the same opener once again. Stargate with Twilight, Resonating Glaives on the way, and he has a lot of gateways on the way. So this speaks a few things to me. It means that, well, it means that his macro is pretty good if he's adding on this many gateways early. A lot of people have like 4 to 6 gateways on 2 bases. That's not really sufficient. You want to be able to spend your money super efficiently and quickly. So I like to see that he made all those gates. But as I pointed out last time, he would be better served to make like a cannon, a cannon, a cannon, and then like gates out here. But what do we see? Old habits die hard, no forge. And this has been something that has gained a lot of popularity in the last couple years in Legacy of the Void, probably more like year, is delaying the forage, getting tech buildings. We see a Dark Shrine and a Temple Archives on the way. And once again, I've set up a drop, and I've really made a mistake here and not gotten the Queen Taxi, because the Queen, I know he's gone Phoenix, and the Queen Taxi is what shuts down the Phoenix. And because I have just started recently kind of going for this style, I haven't really like ground these habits into my head of like, oh yes, I have forgotten the Queen Taxi Overlord. But I did, however, remember to do that thing that I reminded you guys to do whenever you do this drop play, which is throw units over at the third base while you're doing this, and I lose an Overlord there. Thankfully I did try to drop him. So this is what happens whenever you play the same person twice in a row and you do a wonky build. Now, I've really effed up my build and forgot the Queen Taxi, and I didn't commit nearly as much to this because I figured that he would be defending against this and would be much more diligent and would be expecting this, especially because of the way he reacted in the early game. Clearly he was not happy with the way he lost. So look at this. If we go to income this time, we're even in workers as opposed to me being behind and just having 33, and I've taken a 4th. So I am much less committed to this, and I already have a lair and a macro hatch. So although to this guy, to Demon, this looks like the exact same build minus the Queen Taxi, which is just an error, plain and simple, by me, he thinks that, oh yeah, I've defended this really well. But he's doing the same shit. He's playing almost exactly the same, and that's not something that just Protoss players do. In fact, I would say that Terran players are probably the most habitual out of all StarCraft 2 players, but that's neither here nor there. StarCraft players in general are habitual creatures. Notice that Demon made a lot of adjustments, Adepts in the main, better Phoenix micro, but he has yet to put gates out here. He has yet to put an earlier Forge down and then do Cannon SimCity, you know. And he cranks out Adepts really quickly there. So this is the difference. Last game I went for mass Lings. Lings the whole time, I was in his face. In this game I'm going for Spire. And Phoenix are good against... Phoenix are good against Mutalisk. So you might be saying, well, Wiley, why the heck are you going for a Spire if you know that this guy, Demon, has opened Phoenix? And I'll tell you this, and this is a big tip as far as playing against the same person over and over goes, is that this guy, Demon, is clearly vexed by my style that I was hitting him with, the sort of ridiculously obnoxious, massling with upgrades, Dropper Lord play. And I could tell, based on all these gates, and all those Adepts that were sitting in the main, that this guy was adjusting severely to the style that I played last game. And I didn't have to scout the gates to deduce that all of those Adepts were a product of all those gates, because when you see that many gates at that point in the game, you can deduce that he's made a lot of gateways. So he's going double Robo as he's trying to take his 4th, and this is just the same thing that he did last game. Not really any real SimCity, but here we go. Big engagement coming here, and he was trying to get Storm, but the Archons have to be morphed because I attacked right before he had Psystorm energy. He was maybe like 2 energy short on those high temps, and Ling's crushed that base. So that's the thing about playing Adept styles, is as long as you threaten with Banes, even if you don't have speed, if the threat of Banes is there, you can really pressure the Adept player. And he was trying to tech into Psystorm there, which was a decent move to try to counter this Ling Bane play. But what's tricky about that is if the Ling Bane surrounds this Nexus, you have to get up really close to Storm here, 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 and here. Because Storm is good whenever you're fighting like a clumped up army that's in a box like that, and you can do 2 big storms. Like that's why Storm is so good against Terran Bio, is because the surface area is good. Nice force field there, and again, I'm doing a move there that cost me virtually nothing, like trying to run in the front door, but I have no intention of like blowing this down with Banes or committing to that. As you can see, he misstepped with his Adepts there, and because he didn't have any Archons with his army, I can simply pick everything off, and that is a product of upgrades. Despite the fact that he is going double upgrade, because he's delayed his upgrades, I've accumulated a huge advantage with upgrades, and that means that even Adepts can be fought with pure Ling. So notice that because these Adepts were moving between the 3rd and natural, the 3rd was quickly ravaged thereafter. This base was taken as backup, this base was saturated, and all of these gases were taken. Notice that after the Spire completed, I've started Mutalisk production. 10 are on the way, 11 are already out. So in a few brief seconds, about 21 Mutas will be out. And because I scouted all those Adepts in that mid-game attack, I knew that he had stopped producing Phoenix. Because this guy, Demon, thought, well, yeah, the Dropper Lords are annoying, and pretty much the only role of the Phoenix in this game is going to be to kill the Dropper Lords. And then after he stopped that Dropper Lord push and had so many Phoenix, I knew that this guy's not going to be this guy is not going to continue to produce Phoenix because he is so worried about holding off Mass Ling, and he lost last game because he didn't have a sufficient enough ground army to hold off his bases, that I can deduce that he is definitely going to be going for a huge ground army this game. So that allowed me to tech into Muta, because Muta is really countered by Phoenix, but if they only have one Stargate Phoenix and they stop producing Phoenix and they don't scout because they're always being pressured with Ling Bane, then that means that you can actually still win with Muta because they haven't actually made the counter or scouted continuously to see if they should start making the counter. Yeah, he opened with Stargate, but then he thought, oh, okay, he's doing Mass Ling bullshit again. Phoenix are useless. And oh, I held that Dropper Lord push fine, I just had to make a bunch of Adepts. So because of the way that I played in Game 1, I made my opponent prioritize a ground army, and despite the fact that he opened Stargate, in theory the build that counters Mutalisk, I was able to go into Mutalisk and defeat my opponent. Despite the fact that it appeared as though I was playing the same style, and I intentionally represented that information to my opponent to deceive him and alter his unit composition intentionally, and then that allowed me to transition into the Mutalisk, a move that in Zerg vs Protoss is often predicated on taking advantage of your opponent's unit composition. Another thing to note, since this guy was worried about Mass Ling, let's look at the upgrades he chose to get. Charge, Storm, Resonating Glaives, all of which are used against Lings. Now, if he was worried about Muta at all, he would have gotten Blink. He got the Twilight incredibly early. He was freaking chrono boosting it for a lot of the game. And if someone catches you off guard with Mutas, if you have 3 base economy and a good amount of gateways, sometimes, you know, you can hang around if you have Blink Stalkers. But even though this guy had Templar tech, yeah, you can make Archons to defend your mineral line, but if the Zerg has so many Mutas, 20 Mutas, which is what I had, it's really kind of an insurmountable thing to be able to come back from. Because essentially, this Mass Ling style, keep in mind, I wasn't like wasting Banes here. I wasn't wasting 17 Banelings to like blow up this gateway and try to flood in and kill a bunch of Lings. I was sticking to Mass Ling, I was picking my spots, I was attacking in multiple locations at once. I was forcing him to make a bunch of Adepts that couldn't shoot up. That was allowing me to then make a bunch of drones, take my gases, and then I had a bunch of gas banked up because Lings don't cost gas, and that allowed me to make a crap load of Mutas. Because the most powerful time for a Mutalisk player is the time whenever the Mutalisk are first revealed, because whenever they're first revealed, obviously that's when the person is least likely to have defense, and you can kind of snowball a lead a lot of times. You just kill like 10 workers and they try to make defense, you run over there and snipe the defense. So if you enjoyed that very long-winded kind of breakdown into Mass Ling drop style ZvP and playing the same person twice, make sure you leave a like rating, leave a comment, make sure you click the bell notification icon if you're subscribed so you get a notification. I also have a Patreon if you want to give me some money for making these StarCraft videos. Have a good one, guys.